Welcome to Daily Review, your daily dose of literary exploration. We dive into books that spark curiosity and ignite growth. While our passion often leads us to nonfiction reads that empower and improve your life, no book is off limits. From gripping thrillers to insightful memoirs and compelling fiction to historical accounts, we're here to share and discuss all the interesting reads we discover. Tune in for your next great book idea.
Today, within Daily Review, we're taking a deep dive into, well, a really fascinating realm. It promises to radically reshape how you understand human interaction, maybe even yourself.
That's right.
We're plunging into the core insights from the book Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erikson. Now, it takes the well-established DISC framework, dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness, and it brings it to life through this simple, really intuitive, color-coded system for classifying human behavior.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how our own individual perceptions, which are often, let's face it, pretty rigid and biased, can lead us to profoundly misinterpret behaviors that are simply different from our own.
Exactly. So this deep dive is really designed to explore this powerful framework. It helps us move beyond that quick judgment to hopefully some genuine understanding.
Yeah, recognizing that someone who maybe in your head seems like an idiot, well, the reality is they're anything but.
Absolutely. They're just operating differently.
And this deep dive is designed to help you not just spot these different behavioral styles, but also, crucially, to adapt your own communication. The goal is smoother, more effective interactions, everywhere in your life, work, home, everywhere.
It's about making those connections work better.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Let's unpack this.
Okay, so to really get this framework, we kind of have to go back to the start. Its beginnings were actually pretty humble.
Yeah, not what you might expect.
The DISC method, this incredible tool for understanding communication and behavior, it wasn't born in some fancy university lab.
No, far from it. Its origin story is very practical. It started with a really simple but actually quite profound question from a father and son duo, Bill and David Bonstetter. And the question was,
could an agricultural salesperson sell more seed just by looking at a farm?
Seriously, just by looking?
Just by observing, yeah. Bill Bonstetter, the father, he was a real entrepreneur type. Sales consulting was his thing. Very red-yellow profile, dominant, influential.
Okay, high energy.
Definitely. His son, David, though, was more red-blue, very analytical, precise. He was studying accounting, computer science, spent ages programming in computer labs. Totally different world from his dad's sales floor.
Wow, opposite ends of the spectrum almost.
Pretty much. But they were close, shared this intellectual curiosity.
And that closeness, that synergy, it led to something genuinely revolutionary, didn't it?
It really did. In 1984, David's still a student at the University of Iowa, and his dad comes to him with this idea.
The big idea.
Yeah. Bill basically asks, what if we could couple your ability to develop software with my ability to analyze human behavior?
The light bulb moment.
Exactly. That conversation kicked off a collaboration, and they built this groundbreaking software system. At first, it spat out these detailed, 24-page reports on human behavior.
There were pages.
Yeah, and distributed on those clunky old 3.5-inch floppy disks. Remember those?
Oh, I remember them. So this allowed them to scale up, right? Reach more people.
Massively. It was a huge multiplying factor compared to just doing manual consultations. They founded TTI Success Insights in Iowa, but eventually they did what many Midwesterners dream of.
Escape the cold.
You got it. Moved to sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And they kept innovating. Late 90s, they jumped onto the internet for web-based distribution.
Making it even more accessible.
Totally democratizing access to these behavioral insights. And this system, remember, started with a question about selling farm seed.
Incredible.
It's now used by businesses all over the world. It's transformed countless interactions.
What's so crucial to grasp here, I think, is that human behavior, even though it feels complex, maybe even messy sometimes.
Oh, definitely messy.
It can be understood through a structured lens. It's just too easy and honestly kind of dangerous to label someone who acts differently as, ignorant or wrong or just thick-headed.
Precisely. And the core purpose, as David Bonstetter himself points out, isn't about putting people in boxes. It's about valuing a person for their unique mix of strengths and weaknesses.
Seeing the whole picture.
Revealing their full human potential, moving from that frustration we all feel sometimes to genuine appreciation.
I can definitely see the value in that. And Thomas Erikson, the author of Surrounded by Idiots, he shares this really pivotal encounter that, well, It sparked his own deep dive into all this.
Ah, yes, the origin of the title itself.
Right. He talks about being in high school, noticing how easily he clicked with some people. Conversations just flowed, no friction, easy rhythm.
We've all had that feeling.
Totally. But then with others, everything just seemed to go wrong. What he said didn't land. People would just stare at him like he was, I think he says, from another planet.
That disconnect.
Yeah. So he starts testing things out, saying the same stuff in similar situations. Sometimes it works, sometimes it bombed completely. And this frustration, this inconsistency, it led him to basically split people into two camps in his head.
Which were?
Good and sensible people, and then all the rest. The ones who didn't seem to understand anything at all.
Ouch. That sounds familiar, unfortunately. It's easy to fall into that trap.
It really is. And this brings us right to that core anecdote, the story behind the book's title. The man who was, quite literally, surrounded by idiots.
Tell us about Sture.
Right, Sture. When the author was 25, he met this guy, Sture. Self-employed, 60s, built his own successful business from nothing. Impressive, right?
He instead.
But Sture genuinely and, ferociously believed his employees were incompetent. Department A, complete idiots. Department B, just fools. And Department C, they were so weird he couldn't figure out how they even managed to get to work each day.
Wow. He wasn't holding back.
Not at all. His face would apparently turn bright red when he ranted about them.
And it gets worse, doesn't it? He didn't just think this. He said it.
Oh, yeah. He had no problem calling his employees idiots right to their faces, often in front of the whole company.
Oh, my goodness.
So, unsurprisingly, people actively avoided him. No one dared schedule a one-on-one. He never heard bad news because he'd, proverbially shoot the messenger.
A climate of fear, basically.
Totally. And get this. One office had a literal warning light above the reception desk.
No way.
Yes. Red when Sture was in, green when he was away. Staff, clients, everyone checked it. Some people would literally turn around and leave if the light was red. Decide to come back at a more opportune time.
That is unbelievable, but also kind of paints a picture, doesn't it?
A very clear picture. The tension must have been incredible.
So this is where the author steps in, right? He sees all this unfolding.
Exactly. He's witnessing this incredibly toxic dynamic, and he asks the only question he can think of. It's deceptively simple, but it cuts right to the heart of Sture's whole problem.
And the question was?
Who hired all these idiots?
Brilliant. Simple, but devastatingly effective.
Right. Because, of course, Sture had hired most of them himself. So the implicit accusation was crystal clear. Who's actually the idiot here?
And that forces Sture, or at least it should force him, to confront his own definition of idiocy.
Exactly. What was his definition? It was simply anyone who didn't think or act exactly like him.
That is such a crucial point. It highlights that really pervasive, really dangerous human tendency to just compare everyone to ourselves. Our way is the right way.
And Sture used expressions apparently chillingly similar to ones the author himself had used about people he didn't get along with. Things like arrogant windbags or tedious blockheads.
The mirror got turned around.
Big time. So the author realized, hang on, I have my own obvious problems with certain types of people. That whole incident with Sture, especially after one particularly nasty meeting that left him with a lump in his stomach, it was a massive wake-up call.
A moment of clarity.
Definitely. He understood that going through life constantly thinking he was surrounded by people who were impossible to work with wasn't just unpleasant. It would severely limit his own potential. It would create constant friction.
So he made a decision.
A very clear one.
Yeah.
He didn't want to end up like Sturkin. He decided right then to dedicate himself to learning how people function. Because as he realized, no matter what job he did, he'd always be dealing with people.
In every single role, yeah. Friend, colleague, parent, spouse. It touches everything.
And he's very clear that this wasn't just about improving work dynamics. He explicitly says this knowledge fundamentally changed him as a person. It transformed his relationships across the board.
He calls it the most important knowledge of all for him, which is a pretty strong statement.
It really is. But then there's the next step, right? It's one thing to learn the theory, like we're doing now.
By understanding the concepts.
But the author really emphasizes that just knowing the theory isn't enough. True competence, real skill, comes from applying it.
He uses that great analogy about learning to ride a bike.
Yeah, I love that one. You can read all the books, memorize the physics, watch videos.
Know everything about balance.
Exactly. But until you actually get on the bike, feel the wobbles, figure out the balance yourself, make the effort, you don't truly know how to ride. It's about the practice, the experience, not just absorbing information.
That's a really powerful distinction, and it really highlights the book's practical, actionable approach. It's not just academic.
And for the author, it took time. 20 years, he says, of studying communication, consciously trying to understand these differences. But it led to this remarkable personal transformation.
He became less categorical, didn't he? Less judgmental.
Far more patient, especially with people who are the complete opposite of him. The very people he might have once labeled,
As idiots.
Exactly. He doesn't claim he's perfect now, but he says conflicts, dishonesty, they happen very seldom now in his life.
That's a pretty significant shift.
It really is. And it all started with Stuart. Who knew that this cranky old guy, seemingly trapped in his own narrow view, could be the catalyst for so much growth?
It just goes to show, doesn't it? Insights can come from the most unexpected places. Or people.
Okay, let's really dig into this core concept now, the one that underpins everything else we're talking about today.
The foundation.
Right. Communication happens on the listener's terms. Sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but the implications are huge.
It's a challenging truth, but it's absolutely vital to get your head around it. It basically means everything you say, every word, tone, gesture, it all gets filtered.
Filtered how?
Through the listener's own unique stuff, their frames of reference, biases, preconceived ideas, whatever they bring to the table colors how they hear you.
So your message almost never lands exactly as you intended it.
Rarely, if ever. It's like trying to hit a moving target through a warped window. The image gets distorted.
Okay, that can feel, well, pretty disheartening, can it? Like, what's the point if I have so little control over how people interpret me?
Yeah, you might think, why even bother trying to get through to them?
Right. No matter how much sense I try to knock into their head, it won't work anyway.
But actually, understanding this truth isn't about giving up. It's about shifting your strategy completely. You can't fundamentally change how the listener functions, their basic wiring.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Most people are aware, at some level, of how they prefer to be treated, how they best receive information.
So the focus shifts to me, the speaker.
Exactly. By consciously adjusting your own communication style to match how they prefer to receive information, you become way more effective.
So I meet them on their turf, so to speak.
You create a secure arena for them, as the book puts it. They can then use their energy to actually understand your message instead of reacting to your delivery style or feeling misunderstood or attacked.
So it really boils down to developing flexibility
Mm-hmm.
and consciously adapting.
Yeah.
Because here's another maybe uncomfortable truth the book points out.
Go on.
You as an individual, whoever you are listening right now, you'll always be in the minority.
How?
Well, no matter what your natural communication style is, most people around you will function differently. You can't just communicate based on your own preferences and expect everyone else to just get it or adapt to you.
That's a really key insight. Flexibility is power here.
It really is. The ability to interpret other people's needs and adapt accordingly, that's what makes someone a truly good communicator. It's about meeting them where they are.
And that is precisely the power of a framework like DISC or the color system in this book. Knowing someone else's likely style, their preferred way of communicating, it gives you more educated guesses.
Better odds of connecting.
Exactly. You can anticipate how they might react, where friction might arise. Now, this framework isn't claiming to be, the ultimate all-encompassing theory of everything human.
No single book could be.
Right. People are complex. We send countless subtle signals. But it offers a remarkably powerful and importantly practical way to simplify and navigate that complexity.
Okay, to give this some maybe historical weight, the author brings in Carl Jung.
The famous psychoanalyst, yeah.
He quotes Jung saying, "We see what we do, but we do not see why we do what we do. Thus, we assess and appraise each other through what we see that we do."
That really gets at it, doesn't it? Our behavior isn't just random actions. It's a whole interconnected pattern, attitudes, beliefs, approaches that sort of subtly governs how we consistently act and react.
Like an underlying operating system.
A good way to put it, and this leads to probably the most crucial takeaway, the core philosophy of the whole book.
Which is?
There is no pattern of behavior that is right or wrong.
So no proper way to be.
Exactly. There's no inherently correct or incorrect behavior in this sense. You are who you are, you're wired a certain way, and fundamentally that's okay.
Within reason, obviously.
Well, of course, within reasonable social limits.
Yep.
But the goal isn't to fundamentally change who you are at your core. It's about understanding your own tendencies and how they mesh or clash with others.
So what does this mean for us, practically? The author uses this fantastic analogy.
The toolbox.
Yes. He says behavior patterns are like a toolbox. All different tools are needed, right? Each has a specific job.
Like a sledgehammer.
Exactly. A 30-pound sledgehammer is brilliant for tearing down a wall. Absolutely the right tool for that job.
But not for hanging a picture.
Definitely not. You wouldn't use it to delicately hang a picture frame on a plaster wall. Different tools for different tasks. Different behavioral styles for different situations.
And this analogy helps counter that common objection people have to categorizing, doesn't it? That feeling of being pigeonholed.
Yeah, people resist labels sometimes.
But the reality is we all categorize people anyway, maybe just less consciously, more based on our own biases. The key here is that doing it with a framework like this can be incredibly positive.
If it's done right.
If the focus is on understanding and adapting, not judging or limiting, it's really about the intention of the person using the tool, their skill, not the tool itself being inherently bad.
Okay, let's peel back another layer then, because our behavior isn't just one flat thing, is it? It's more complex, dynamic.
Right. The book talks about layers of our being. The deepest layer, the absolute bedrock, is our core values.
Things we learn really young.
Exactly. Deeply embedded beliefs, almost impossible to change. Learned from childhood, key formative experiences. Things like fighting is wrong, or all people are of equal worth, or maybe always tell the truth.
Our fundamental moral compass.
Pretty much. They guide our deepest, most instinctive responses. The author mentions, for instance, never having hit anyone since third grade because fighting is wrong was a core value he really internalized.
Okay, so that's the bedrock. What's the next layer up?
That would be our attitudes and approaches. These tend to form a bit later in life, high school, college, first job, significant life events.
Shaped more by experience.
Yeah, they come from how we interpret events and our learned responses over time. The author gives a vivid example of a relative who developed this deep distrust of salespeople.
Oh, yeah.
She came to believe that 85% of all salespeople were swindlers. Just totally convinced.
Wow, how did that play out?
Well, this really strong attitude meant she returned almost everything she bought. Sweaters, cars, you name it. She was always convinced she'd been somehow conned.
That must have been exhausting.
You'd think so. But the key distinction here is, while core values are almost set in stone, attitudes can change. Maybe through new experiences, strong evidence, or just a big shift in understanding.
Okay, core values, attitudes. What's the final layer? The one people usually see.
That's our moderated behavior. The book calls it the mask, which is a great term for it.
The face we present to the world.
Exactly. This is where we interpret a specific situation and then consciously or maybe subconsciously choose how to act based on that context.
We all do this, right? Different masks for different situations.
Absolutely. We wear one mask for work, maybe a different one at home, another one for visiting the in-laws, perhaps.
Definitely one for the in-laws.
Or even different masks for, say, a formal networking event versus a casual barbecue with friends. It's about adapting our outward behavior to fit the situation, achieve what we need to, even if our core values and attitudes underneath are still the same.
So this is where that adaptation skill really comes into play.
Precisely. It's not about being fake or inauthentic. It's about being socially intelligent, effective, and respectful of the context you're in.
All right, let's dive into the colors themselves. First up, red, the dominant driver. When you think red, what comes to mind?
Action, results, taking charge. Reds are driven, they're direct, incredibly efficient, always pushing forward.
How do you spot one in the wild, so to speak?
Well, they're often the loudest person in the room. They tend to go all out when explaining something, very animated, and they're usually the first to answer a question.
With confidence.
Oh yeah, unwavering certainty. They make categorical comments on pretty much any topic, delivering their opinions like facts, and they judge situations and people very quickly.
Always moving.
Always active. They hate inactivity. It's all chop chop, done in double time. Life's short, get going, cut to the chase. That's the red mentality.
Okay, and honesty. They're known for being blunt, right?
To a fault, sometimes. They say exactly what they think. No frills, no sugarcoating. They just don't see the need for pleasantries if it gets in the way of the point.
Which others might perceive as honesty.
Often, yeah, raw honesty. Because they dare to express their personal truths. From their perspective, they're just stating facts. They genuinely don't get what all the fuss is about when others get upset.
So if you need someone with relentless energy, follow through.
You definitely want a red on your team. They are tireless fighters. They'll keep going when everyone else gives up, especially if the task matters to them, if it aligns with their goals.
The book calls it the slog or split phenomenon.
Exactly. If a task has purpose, clear objectives, they will go through fire and water to get it done. But if it doesn't,
Into the bin.
into the trash it goes.
Yeah.
No second thoughts. Efficiency above all.
And that competitive spirit is legendary, isn't it?
Absolutely relentless. It's innate. They have to win. The author tells that story about the Red CEO.
The soccer player.
Yeah, even as a young guy playing soccer, it was like a tournament for him. On the field, he'd apparently just flatten anyone in his path to score. Ruthless.
Wow. Even with his kids.
He even admitted to intimidating his own 5- and 6-year-old kids when playing memory card games because they had better memories and kept winning.
That's intense.
His reasoning, he just wanted to win. It wasn't about being mean. It's just this fundamental red drive to dominate, to come out on top. It extended to everything, even racing, to read books at like 100 pages an hour.
Good grief.
Huh.
That drive for efficiency sounds exhausting, but also effective.
It is. Think of Bjorn, the Red Company founder. His meetings were famous for being short and sweet, never a minute longer than absolutely necessary.
Get in, get it done, get out.
Pretty much. He managed to cram more into an average day than most people, squeezing emails, calls, meeting notes into tiny 5-minute gaps between things.
There's that sense of constant urgency.
Palpable. Things must happen, and they must happen now.
What about their conviction? The book mentions they prioritize conviction over detail sometimes.
Oh, definitely. That story about Elizabeth, the Red manager, is classic. In a meeting, she stated completely confidently that the company was expected to earn $50 million a week.
Which wasn't true.
Not even close. The actual figures were more like $2 to $2.5 million. But here's the kicker. No one questioned her. Not even the highly trained consultants in the room.
Why not?
Because she sounded so convincing. Her expression, her determined look, her unwavering voice. When Reds believe something, they project absolute certainty. Their truth is the only truth. Details are boring, nuances are irrelevant. Confidence trumps accuracy.
It's that my way or the wrong way vibe. Groundbreaking, strong-willed, results-focused, decisive.
They're not afraid to make the tough calls when everyone else is dithering. Hesitation looks like weakness to a Red. Their determination can border on pure stubbornness.
Like the neighbor who took on the superintendent about the trash policy.
Perfect example. Fearless in the face of what they see as inefficient bureaucracy. They just understand that risks are part of life, and getting things done takes hard work and willpower. Push through obstacles.
But surprisingly, they can adapt to new ideas.
Yes, but with a big caveat. Only if the new idea clearly moves things forward, gets better results, helps them win. A Red thinks quickly. If a genuinely better solution pops up, they'll switch tracks instantly.
They might even change something that's already working.
Just because I could. Driven by that pure challenge of optimizing, improving, making it faster or better. This creates dynamism for sure, but
It can be incredibly stressful for others.
especially greens and blues, yeah. They just got used to the last change and suddenly everything's different again because the Red had a new idea.
Okay, so that's the powerful driving Red.
Mm-hmm.
But let's flip the coin. How are these behaviors perceived by other people? Because it's not always positive, is it?
Absolutely not. Others often see Reds as, well, belligerent, arrogant, egotistical, unyielding, impatient, aggressive, even controlling, dictatorial, or tyrannical.
Strong words.
Very. Now, a Red themselves might just shrug this off. They're generally more task-focused, less worried about social approval. But for the people around them, it's a very different story. People are often genuinely afraid of their temper, their bluntness.
And that impatience can manifest in pretty disruptive ways, right? Like Bjorn's driving.
Oh, yeah. Losing his license every so often because he genuinely thought speed limits were just recommendations for less skilled drivers.
Driving the bus lane.
For over 20 miles because it was quicker.
Yeah.
And just budgeting for the fines like $140 a month as a cost of doing business.
So they know it's wrong, technically.
They know the rules.
Yeah.
But getting things done, making progress, that takes priority over following rules they see as inefficient or inconvenient. The objective trumps the regulation.
And their idea of open communication.
Can feel like brutal candor to everyone else. For a Red, it means saying exactly what they think, no filter, which others find incredibly stressful, maybe even offensive.
Like asking a Red for an honest opinion on your big project.
Yeah, brace yourself. You'll get that brutal candor that leaves you feeling forlorn and crushed, wondering why they had to be so harsh. Reds don't usually intend to create conflict. They often see it as a natural, even necessary part of clearing the air and solving problems.
So backing down is the worst thing you can do.
In a conflict with a red, yes. Backing off, getting defensive, you lose their respect instantly. They see it as weakness.
Their need for control is also pretty strong, isn't it?
Palpable and pervasive, as you said. They want power over situations. They'll often dominate conversations, talking constantly, interrupting, ignoring others, just to stay in control and steer things their way.
Like that red-blue middle manager example.
Vivid. She'd jump in, do her employees' task herself because she could do it faster or better, and then paradoxically criticize them for being too slow.
Frustrating for the employee, I bet.
Deeply frustrating. It comes across as rigid micromanaging, even if the Reds' intention is just pure efficiency.
This often leads to them seeming like they lack empathy or basic social graces.
It can definitely appear that way. Remember Bjorn at the company holiday party, cutting off a conversation about the host's daughter just because he was tired of conversation?
Ouch.
Classic red bluntness. They often win discussions, which they see as productive, but the cost can be high. They lose friends, people can dislike them, and they are cut off from information because nobody wants to deal with them or trust them with sensitive stuff.
And this can reinforce their own view that everyone else is an idiot.
Exactly. Because others aren't as direct as results-driven. And here's the ultimate twist on the surrounded by idiots idea.
The dinner table story.
Right. A stressed green-blue colleague is sharing his struggles, personal and professional. Does the red listener offer sympathy? Support?
I'm guessing, yeah.
No chance. He apparently tore into the guy, told him he complained too much, needed to pull yourself together and just get on with it.
Wow. Zero empathy.
From the outside, yes. It truly is the Reds who, perhaps more than any other color, often genuinely believe they are surrounded by idiots. Not out of malice, necessarily, but because their core drivers, efficiency, results, blunt honesty, just don't mesh with how other colors operate.
Okay, let's completely shift gears now onto our next vibrant color. Yellow, the enthusiastic inspirer.
Ah, the sunshine people.
Exactly. If you know someone who's just relentlessly optimistic, always cheerful, sees possibilities everywhere even when things go wrong, you're probably looking at a yellow.
They really do live to live, don't they? Driven by fun, laughter, wanting to savor every moment, always making grand plans, big declarations.
And they're natural communicators.
Effortlessly. They spread joy, warmth. That relentless optimism can just demolish opposition or cynicism. Who can stay grumpy or skeptical when someone's always pointing out the positives, painting this bright picture of the future?
They're often the life of the party.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Inspiring others with just sheer enthusiasm.
The author mentions his sister, Marita, as a classic yellow.
Right. Easygoing, charming. Apparently no one's ever said a bad word about her. She connects with everyone, always has something entertaining to say.
Even if it's a bit peculiar.
Exactly. Like, she'll say something odd, and when asked what she was thinking, she just bursts out laughing and says, "Thinking? I wasn't." Operates on pure intuition, spontaneous thought. Endearing to many.
And then there's Mike, the jinxed man.
Oh, Mike. Affectionately called the most jinxed man the author knows. The poor guy has endured endless misfortunes. Wife left him, kids had problems, employers went bankrupt, multiple car accidents, house burgled.
A lot to handle.
You'd think.
Yeah.
But none of it seems to faze him for long. He just bubbles along most of the time, incredibly buoyant. After one car crash where his rusty Alfa hit a lamppost and he couldn't get out the driver's side.
What did he do?
Just shrugged cheerfully and said, "It was fine, I just got out the other door." Always looking on the bright side, no matter what.
Their ability to inspire and persuade is pretty amazing, too.
Truly remarkable. Like Marianne, the sales director. She got incredible results from her team, basically, just by inspiring them, getting them to close their eyes to anything negative and focus only on the grand vision.
And she could charm angry customers.
The author saw her turn an irate customer scowling, angry, into someone laughing boisterously and signing a deal, all within minutes. Pure yellow magic.
So if you need new ideas, new perspectives.
Yellows are your go-to. They think in images, aren't afraid to try wild new things. Okay, realism might not be their strongest suit.
Huh? Probably not.
But one of their wild ideas might spark another, and suddenly you've got something brilliant that actually works. They're masters at selling snow to a penguin, as the saying goes.
Okay, but all that sunshine, all that persuasive charm, it's not always seen positively by others, is it? There are downsides.
Definitely challenges, especially when viewed through the eyes of other colors. Is all that optimism always a good thing in practice?
Maybe not. Blues, for instance, with their focus on Facts and details. How do they tend to see yellows?
Blues will often perceive yellows as, well, selfish, superficial, maybe overly self-confident, talking way too much, being bad listeners, easily distracted, and frankly pretty careless with details.
And how do yellows react to that kind of feedback?
They might get really distressed in the moment or argue fiercely, but ultimately the book says they have a kind of selective memory. They tend to forget the criticism quickly and genuinely believe they don't have any faults they really need to fix.
That limitless verbosity seems like a common sticking point.
Oh, it's huge. Yellows are fantastic communicators in terms of expressing themselves, captivating an audience, but they often don't have such a limit on the talking part. They just love to talk, love to be heard.
Comes across as egocentric.
Often perceived that way, yeah. Leads to labels like windbag, verbal diarrhea, motor mouth. They dominate conversations effortlessly, sometimes without even realizing they're doing it.
Like Peter, the sales manager in the meeting.
That example is striking. He had only one tiny agenda item out of 19, but somehow managed to speak for an incredible 69% of the total meeting time.
Wow. How does that even happen?
They deliver this stream of unprocessed material that just sounds very good. Lots of enthusiasm, big ideas. It can be deceptive if you don't know their style. You might mistake all that energy for deep knowledge or solid planning.
And the disorganization. The time blindness.
Legendary. Yellows find structured, detailed work incredibly boring. They prefer to keep everything important in their heads, assuming they'll remember it all.
Which leads to
Forgotten appointments, missed deadlines, a trail of half-finished projects. They paint with broad strokes. They're not interested in the fiddly details or the step-by-step process to get there.
like the friends who were super late for dinner.
Exactly. 25 minutes late for a 90-minute dinner reservation, and then they arrive all cheerful, claiming they were just a few minutes late. They've genuinely repressed the actual time and the impact it had.
This feeds into that perception of egocentrism, maybe superficiality.
It can. It often comes across as me, me, me. They talk mostly about themselves, their ideas, their experiences. If a conversation isn't about them or isn't interesting enough, they'll quickly interrupt or steer it back their way.
Like Gustav at the conference.
Perfect example. Dominated the room, answered questions meant for others, just spewed nonsense without a filter, couldn't keep his thoughts in, couldn't tune into others. Yellows will literally close their ears and tune out if they find a conversation boring.
And finally, that pig-headedness about ideas.
Yeah, especially if an idea came from a trusted friend or just feels right to them intuitively, they can be incredibly stubborn.
Facts don't matter.
Often, no. You can present all the logical arguments, all the contradictory evidence. If they feel the idea is right, they'll stick to it, often with this charming but infuriating stubbornness. Sometimes it's a strength, pushing new things forward against resistance, but often it just looks like pure pig-headedness to others, an unwillingness to face reality.
Okay, let's move on to our third color. Green, the stable supporter.
Ugh, the greens. The most common type, apparently. About 45% of the population, the book estimates.
So we encounter them a lot. What are their defining traits?
Think balanced, calm, leisurely, easygoing. Hippocrates called them phlegmatic. The Aztecs called them earth people. They're great stabilizers.
Oh, so.
They're really good at counterbalancing the high energy, maybe more extreme behaviors of reds and yellows, and they can even help warm up the more reserved, analytical blues.
A key thing is their desire for harmony. Right. Avoiding offense.
Absolutely central. They will rarely talk back directly to a boss making a weird decision, at least not to their face. They prefer to find ways to fit in, keep the peace, maintain harmony.
They don't rock the boat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're excellent at calming down a frantic yellow who's bouncing off the walls with ideas, and they can gently draw out an aloof blue who might seem distant. The author tells that nice story about the yellow husband.
The one who takes center stage.
Yeah, horsing around, being the life of the party. And his green wife just sits quietly, smiles, and says with genuine affection, "But he's having so much fun." Her focus is on others' well-being, not on herself.
That thoughtfulness extends to real selflessness too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes to their own detriment.
Very much so. Like Maja, the assistant, she organized everything for her colleagues, remembered everyone's birthdays, even their families, sent gentle reminders to stressed consultants to look after themselves, take breaks.
He felt good doing it.
Genuinely. She felt good taking care of others. But the risk is always there, being taken advantage of because she's so agreeable.
And Lhasa, the helpful friend.
Similar story, always offering a hand driving kids places, helping friends move, lending tools, patiently listening to everyone's complaints. sometimes completely forgetting his own work or needs in the process.
Their predictability is another hallmark.
Gregor, the CEO with the all-green management team, knew this inside out. He could predict their responses almost perfectly. No, from Anna, yes. From Stefan, maybe. From Bertil.
Why so predictable?
It stems from that deep regard for others. They're trying to satisfy everyone, avoid upsetting anyone, so getting a straight, potentially controversial answer is tough. Their replies are filtered through that desire for consensus.
But they are fantastic listeners, aren't they?
Truly excellent. Most Greens are introverts, active in their inner world, don't talk just to fill silence. Unlike Reds, who listen for actionable info, or Yellows, who, well, often don't listen much at all.
Greens genuinely hear you.
They have a genuine ear for human problems. They might not jump in with solutions immediately, but they offer deep empathy, real understanding, which is often exactly what someone needs.
Like Helena, the green salesperson.
Perfect example. She landed a huge, complex deal primarily because she just listened patiently and attentively while this tough executive talked for an hour about his vintage car collection. Didn't interrupt, just listened. That built the trust.
Okay, so Greens sound lovely, supportive, calm, great listeners, but their approach must have its challenges too, right? Especially for people trying to get things done quickly. That's absolutely right. While they're inherently lovely and supportive, their style can definitely lead to significant challenges for other colors, especially around decision-making and pace.
How are they often perceived by others then?
They can come across as cautious, sometimes frustratingly stubborn, definitely resistant to change, maybe even indifferent, or lacking real commitment because they're so agreeable on the surface.
That agreeable exterior hiding inertia.
Exactly. Their indecisiveness and lack of initiative are pretty clear markers and can drive faster types absolutely crazy. Remember Christopher calling about the boiler?
Vaguely. Remind me.
He called the author about a problem in his apartment building's boiler. But instead of just asking directly for help or a recommendation, he started with all these preliminary questions, offered unsolicited advice about home maintenance, took ages to finally indirectly get to his actual request.
Oh, yes, circling the issue.
Right. It shows Greens often won't just come up with anything on his own or take charge without very clear prompting and lots of support.
And their reluctance to confront or disagree openly.
Huge. They don't like shouting from the rooftops, don't want to make a fuss. They'll often express disagreement very ambiguously. Instead of, that's impossible, it's more like, well, it appears there might be a few challenges in delivering that.
Softening the blow.
Exactly. It's partly to avoid taking direct responsibility if things go wrong, partly to avoid risking their reputation as nice, and partly just to avoid seeming combative. Keeping the boat steady is paramount.
And the resistance to change. That's a big one, especially since they're the majority.
It's a widespread issue. The author's exercise about fear of change is telling. He asks, who's afraid of chain silence? No one stands up. Then he asks who thinks someone else in the room is afraid. Almost everyone stands up, pointing fingers.
Huh. That says it all.
Their default setting is often, it was better before, much better. They prefer the known comfort of the past over the scary uncertainty of the future.
And perhaps the trickiest part for others, that conflict avoidance turning into passive aggression.
Yes, this can be really damaging. They tend to smother conflict, pretend it doesn't exist. The book uses the image of a rotting pile of trash at the dinner table. Everyone sees it, smells it, but no one dares mention it directly.
So the problem just festers.
Exactly. And when a Green is confronted directly, what happens? They might become silent and passive, just shut down completely. Or they might sulk for days, even weeks, holding on to the grievance internally.
Like the author's mistake with the passive employee.
Right. The employee sensed the author's discomfort and guilt about pushing him and basically ended up doing virtually nothing for weeks, exploiting that hesitation. It's absolutely vital to address issues with Greens directly, kindly, but clearly before they fester and become entrenched. All right, let's tackle our final color. Blue, the meticulous analyst.
The precision experts.
Exactly. Think blue, think perfectionism, logic, an unwavering commitment to facts, data, quality. They are the analysts, the thorough, rational ones.
Often unassuming, working quietly in the background.
Very much so. They don't make a fuss. But deep down, they know they are experts in their specific domain. They value accuracy and solid evidence above almost everything else.
Their attention to detail is legendary, isn't it? Almost obsessive.
Borderline obsessive, yeah. The author's example of the blue friend correcting football stats mid-conversation.
Actually, the Patriots have only been to the Super Bowl 10 times.
Exactly. and adding obscure coin toss statistics for good measure. The author even mentions deliberately listing characteristics alphabetically in the book, knowing a blue reader would notice and appreciate that subtle precision.
For a blue, accuracy isn't just nice to have, it's like a moral duty.
Totally. And they embody modesty, self-containment. They rarely feel the need to broadcast their achievements or seek praise.
Knowing they're right is enough.
Usually, yes.
Hmm.
It's sufficient for them to know they know the answer, that their work is correct. Like the blue colleague who solved the complex technical problem after hours of group struggle.
And just casually said, well, you never asked.
Exactly. No fanfare needed. Just knowing they did the job well, with precision and integrity, that's the reward.
Their focus on process over results can be a big difference, especially compared to reds.
Oh, definitely. That detailed story about the packaging CEO is pure blue. He sets this rigid 50-minute meeting, no coffee offered,
Very businesslike.
and then systematically makes the author rewrite a proposal. Takes it from a concise 10, 12 pages, expands it to 35, then 85, then a massive 300 pages.
Constantly asking.
Is there any more material? For this CEO, the process of meticulously gathering and analyzing every single scrap of information was clearly more interesting, probably more important than the actual final decision. The comprehensive data journey was paramount. Their honesty and integrity seemed rock solid too, guided by facts, principles.
Like the author's engineer father pointing out all the flaws in a house during a viewing.
Yes, because this and that is wrong with the plumbing, and the roof has this issue. His mother would be horrified, thinking he's scaring buyers off.
But he just couldn't hide faults he knew were there.
Exactly. Valuing accuracy and honesty over making a quick buck. A profound commitment to truth and detail.
Logical thinking and risk aversion are also fundamental to blues.
Logic above feelings, always striving for rational, data-backed arguments. The IKEA furniture assembly example is perfect.
Reading the instructions twice.
Checking all the parts, wiping off dust, counting every single screw before starting.
Prioritizing perfection, avoiding any surprises or errors.
Their motto seems to be, if the trail doesn't match the map, there's something wrong with the trail. They trust the plan, the data.
And this extends to following rules meticulously, like the father stopping at a red light at 3 a.m., totally deserted street.
Why?
Because that's the way you do it. Rules exist for a reason, they provide order, and they must be followed. Precisely.
And finally, they're often quiet observers needing personal space.
Silence is golden for a blue. They're typically introverts, very active in their rich inner world of analysis and thought, which often means they seem quiet externally.
Don't need to dominate the conversation.
Not at all. Prefer observing, analyzing, recording information. And they need significant personal space, both physically and mentally. If you get too close, they might cross their arms, lean back subtly.
Less movement, fewer gestures.
Generally, yes. They stand still, use few gestures, but often maintain very direct, penetrating eye contact. Gives the impression they're constantly evaluating everything you say and do. Okay, so you might think, great, precise, logical, factual, these people must be easy to work with. But they come with their own set of challenges, don't they? Especially for those who value speed, emotion, or big picture thinking.
They absolutely do. While their dedication to facts is admirable, it can create friction. How are blues often perceived by other colors?
They can come across as evasive, maybe defensive if questioned, definitely overly perfectionist, reserved, fastidious, meticulous to a fault, hesitant, conservative, lacking independence sometimes because they need all the data.
Questioning everything.
To an annoying degree for some, suspicious, tedious, aloof, even cold-hearted, they see themselves as realists, but others often perceive them as pessimists, always quick to find the flaw rather than the possibility.
That perfectionism, it can be a real flaw in practice, right? Even if the intention is good.
Definitely. That saying, 95% right is actually 100% wrong, sums up the blue mindset perfectly. Like Hans, the friend who immediately spotted the crooked cupboard door in the newly remodeled kitchen.
Not trying to be mean, just couldn't not see it.
Exactly. His inner perfectionist alarm went off. Or the woman who denied being a perfectionist while, meticulously organizing her shoes by size and sanitizing her kitchen like a war zone. Their standard for good enough is just way higher than most people's.
And they can seem distant, hard to connect with personally.
Yeah, they don't usually engage in casual small talk willingly. They don't feel the same need for superficial social connection as a yellow or green might. This can make them seem cold, dismissive, especially to more relationship-focused types. Their personal bubble, ruled by logic and order, can feel pretty chilly.
Their tendency towards over-preparation
Yeah.
that leads to decision paralysis.
Immensely frustrating in fast-moving environments. The friend who test drove 16 different car makes, 50 different models, over 8 months.
Before buying,
The most common, most researched, safest bet, a Volvo V70. They can literally plan into the next century without ever putting a shovel to the ground. The exhaustive analysis mitigating every possible risk is often more comfortable, more interesting even, than making the actual uncertain leap of a decision.
and when the author gave that big inspirational speech about reaching the peak of success.
The blues in the audience famously dryly replied, "We have Excel."
Perfect. Facts over dreams.
Totally. No point appealing to their feelings or throwing out wild, untested ideas. You need verifiable data, logical arguments, realistic projections, grounded in reality.
Finally, that critical, questioning nature. A strength, but also a challenge.
Both, absolutely. They question everything, assumptions, processes, even Excel formulas someone else wrote. They have an incredibly higher standard of proof. And they often deliver these critical observations quite insensitively, not realizing the impact.
Do they take criticism personal?
Interestingly, usually not if it's untrue or unfounded. They'll just logically dismantle it. But if the criticism implies their work is flawed, inaccurate, that hits them very hard. It cuts right to their core identity as competent and precise. They often don't realize their blunt honesty isn't an excuse for being callous, like the engineer father pointing out all the house flaws. It can really bruise others.
Wow. We've really unpacked each color now. Red, yellow, green, and blue. Got a much clearer picture of their traits, their drivers, their challenges.
And if there's one big takeaway from all this, it's not just about slapping labels on people you know.
No, it's more profound than that.
It's that powerful, maybe uncomfortable realization that our own reality, how we see things, interpret actions, words, it's just one of maybe 4 fundamental ways of filtering the world.
So the real idiot isn't the person acting differently.
But maybe our own rigid expectation that everyone should see things exactly the way we do.
That shift in perspective is huge.
It's transformative. This whole framework ultimately isn't just about diagnosing others. It's a mirror. It forces us to look at our own biases, our default settings, to understand that effective communication isn't about being right in our own little world.
It's about adapting.
Strategically adapting to their terms. That's where genuine connection and understanding happen.
Okay, so bearing that in mind, what happens when these different colors come together? Either within one person's complex personality or maybe more obviously in a team environment?
That brings up a really interesting point about self-perception versus external perception.
Right.
How we see ourselves versus how others see us.
Is there a pattern there?
A very clear bias, according to the book. Reds and yellows. They tend to significantly inflate their strengths and genuinely believe they have no real weaknesses. Their egos are pretty robust, often unshakable.
Okay, confident types. What about greens and blues?
It's the opposite. They often exaggerate their weaknesses and downplay or even ignore their strengths. This makes giving them positive feedback really tricky sometimes. You compliment them and they immediately redirect to what went wrong or what they could have done better.
Fascinating contrast. And this next story really highlights these dynamics in action, doesn't it? The company party gone wild.
Oh, the bank branch party. A perfect real-life example. It starts predictably enough. A yellow advisor proposes a party to boost morale. The red bank director enthusiastically approves. Sounds like action.
Greens step up to organize.
Of course, ever helpful, the greens agree to handle the logistics. Meanwhile, the blue credit manager immediately starts raising detailed concerns. Transportation, insurance, liability.
Covering all the bases.
And the yellow who proposed it. True to form, ends up skipping the party altogether. Probably double booked with a wedding or forgot entirely until it was too late. Classic yellow.
But the really interesting part starts when the alcohol starts flowing.
That's when things get wild. The booze acts as this powerful disinhibitor, stripping away the usual masks and revealing some surprising, frankly comical personality reversals. It lays bare the underlying dynamics.
Okay, you have to tell us. What happened to the yellows?
The yellows, normally the cheerful, positive entertainers, became these moody, philosophical, brooding pessimists, staring into their drinks, wondering aloud, what's the point of it all? Some even contemplating quitting on the spot.
Total opposite. What about the blue?
The blue credit manager, usually silent, meticulous, analytical to a fault, was found dancing wildly on the table and telling dirty jokes.
Oh.
Yes, it was like the yellows and blues completely swapped personalities. These suppressed sides just burst out.
Incredible. What about the red boss?
The red bank director, normally stern, aggressive, dominating, he became weirdly apologetic. Wandered around telling his green administrators that he wasn't really a horrible person, they shouldn't take it personally when he yelled during the week.
Trying to smooth things over.
Seems like it, but the Greens. Oh, the Greens.
What do? They normally avoid conflict.
Normally.
Oh, class.
But fueled by a bit of liquid courage, they seized this rare opportunity. They collectively gave the Red Boss a proper dressing down, finally voicing all their criticisms about his behavior over the past 20 years.
20 years of pent-up frustration. How did he react?
Utterly humiliated. He apparently fled the party first, barely managing a coherent exit.
Wow, what a night.
It's such a vivid demonstration, isn't it? How extreme stress, or in this case, alcohol acting like stress, can just rip off the mask and show what's underneath.
But the most telling part,
Mm-hmm.
Monday morning.
Back to normal. Absolutely normal. Yellow's cracking jokes, blue guy silent and meticulous, boss glowering, greens staring quietly at the wall. It perfectly illustrates that mask effect and just how resilient our default behaviors really are.
That interplay between colors is also shown really clearly in what the author calls the most enlightening team project.
Ah, yes, the single color group experiment. Brilliant, but brutal.
He divided managers into groups based purely on their dominant color, all reds together, all yellows, all greens, all blues, and gave them a complex problem to solve. The results were, well,
Hilarious, but also incredibly insightful about team dynamics. Let's break it down. The red group.
loud, argumentative. 3 people trying to explain why they were right simultaneously. 2 others arguing fiercely. 1 guy working alone in a corner, convinced he had it solved.
Even if it was the wrong problem.
Exactly. They declared victory, triumphant, but had solved the completely wrong problem. Speed and perceived dominance over accuracy. Classic red.
Okay, the yellow group.
Frantic, lively, everyone jostling for whiteboard space, lots of amusing anecdotes, excited doodling, probably emailing unrelated ideas. Their final presentation was super entertaining, charismatic.
Okay.
It completely camouflaged the fact that the group hadn't solved the task at all. They'd had a great time socially, but achieved nothing concrete on that actual problem.
How about the green group?
Absurdly quiet. Hesitant. They actually needed the facilitator's help just to get started. Then, painstaking deliberation. Debating the plan of action endlessly, but producing nothing.
Nothing concrete. They kept rejecting proposals on minor technicalities or out of fear of offending someone in the group. They just suffered silently through the whole thing, unable to initiate or conclude. Painful to watch, probably. And finally, the blue group.
Also absurdly quiet. But for different reasons. They meticulously read and reread the instructions, corrected the grammar and the problem statement itself, debated the precise structure of their approach endlessly.
But didn't get close to a solution. Not even close. They apparently caused chaos for the poor facilitator with their constant minute questions, and predictably, they were branded idiots by the impatient reds, boring by the yellows, and just made the greens suffer silently with their lack of progress.
This experiment just makes it crystal clear, doesn't it?
Undeniably. No group should be composed solely of individuals of the same type. Diversity is the only possible route to truly effective teamwork.
Managers often hire people like themselves because it feels comfortable, they get each other.
But that leads to these homogeneous, ultimately ineffective teams. Blind spots everywhere. The truly successful approach is to deliberately mix the types, get that dynamic tension, the different perspectives. That's where robust solutions come from.
Okay, we've looked at the traits, the interactions, even behavior under pressure. Now, the big question. What does this all mean for you listening? How do you actually use this knowledge day to day?
And the core principle the book hammers home is simple, but it's not easy. You can't change other people fundamentally. You have to adapt to them.
That ability to adapt.
Yeah.
That's basically emotional intelligence, right? EI or EQ.
Exactly. It's that skill in action. But it takes conscious effort and energy. Our natural core behavior is easy. It's autopilot. Adaptation is, by definition, unnatural. It requires deliberate thought and energy.
Which is why when we're tired or stressed, our masks slips.
Precisely. If we're low on energy, uncertain, our core behavior pops out, sometimes surprising people who are used to our adapted persona. But truly, good communication is almost always about skilled, conscious adaptation.
So let's get practical. Let's talk strategies. How do we adapt our communication style for each specific color to give ourselves the best shot at connecting, building rapport, having productive interactions?
All right, let's start with adapting to red behavior. Rule number 1, speed.
Be quick.
Be quick, speak faster, act faster, be punctual, keep things moving. Reds get intensely impatient with slowness. The book even jokes that a red might literally try to grab the steering wheel if you drive too slowly for them.
Okay, speed. What else?
Be businesslike. Skip the lengthy small talk, the flattery. Get straight to the point. State your objective clearly. Paradoxically, because they're so decisive and results-driven.
They're easy to sell too.
Often, yes. If you present the benefits directly, clearly, without waffle, they appreciate efficiency.
And you need to be direct back at them.
Absolutely. Have your own clear opinion. Don't hesitate or vacillate. If a red starts yelling or gets aggressive, the surprising advice is often to stand your ground.
Really, engage.
Place yourself in the center of the storm, telling him that he's wrong. If, and only if, you know your facts cold. It can actually earn their grudging respect. You also need to help manage their risk-taking. Provide concise, undeniable facts. Demand they think twice before leaping. Appeal to their logic, but quickly. Relationship-wise, reds might just exclude people who don't seem immediately useful or efficient. You can subtly help them see the tangible value of social connections for gathering info, building alliances, make it practical for them.
And if they get aggressive, coarse remarks.
Confront it. Calmly, but immediately. Demand adult behavior. Be prepared to walk away if they lose their temper. The absolute worst thing is to let them get their way by barking his head off. That just reinforces the behavior they've likely used successfully for years.
Okay, moving on. Adapting to yellow behavior. What's the number one rule here?
Avoid details. At all costs.
They find them boring.
Excruciatingly boring, distracting. Focus on the broad brushstrokes, the big picture, the exciting vision, the possibilities. Forget the minutia.
Appeal to their gut feeling.
Yes, their intuition, their excitement. Introduce untested ideas, new things with genuine enthusiasm. Make it sound fun, novel, and make a personal connection.
Be social. Use flattery.
Be social, definitely.
Yep.
Yellows thrive on attention, positive affirmation. Genuine flattery works wonders. Make them feel good, seen, appreciated.
But how do you get structured communication? Keep them on track.
That takes effort. You need a plan. Prepare a clear, concise agenda. Have your concrete message ready. And then gently but persistently demand specific answers. You have to actively persuade the yellow to answer your questions very concretely, pulling them back from tangents.
What about time management? They're always late.
Coordinate appointments strictly. Emphasize the tangible consequences of lateness, maybe frame it around their well-being. You'll drop down dead of a heart attack if you keep pushing yourself like this. Appeal to their self-interest.
Or just invite them earlier than everyone else.
That too, a classic tactic. Give them a 6:30 start time for a 7:0 meeting.
And giving feedback to a yellow. That sounds tricky if they take things personally.
It is. Create a friendly, warm, non-threatening atmosphere first. Be persistent with your message. Don't let them charm their way out of it. Use clear facts to back up your claims. And be very aware of their defense mechanisms.
Like the martyr complex. Selective memory.
Exactly. They might genuinely forget uncomfortable truths or play the victim. So the absolute key is to state clearly, I don't dislike you. I'm talking about this specific behavior. And surprisingly, a bit of genuine flattery mixed in can actually help make the criticism land better.
Okay, now for adapting to green behavior. What's the approach here?
You generally need to take the lead in planning, explain every step clearly, in detail, provide very specific instructions and expectations.
Reduce their need to initiate.
Exactly, because they find that stressful. Like the dinner example. Okay, I'll handle the main course. Your job is the dessert. Follow this recipe exactly. We need to start making it at 7 p.m. sharp. Clarity reduces their anxiety.
And avoid conflict in your approach.
Be gentle, yes. But crucially, don't backpedal on necessary criticism once you've decided to give it. Deliver feedback strictly in private, never in front of others. That's deeply shaming for a green.
How do you make the feedback stick?
Convey how their behavior makes you feel. Use I statements. I feel sedangry neglected when. Greens are deeply relational. They hate offending people they care about. Appealing directly to their impact on your feelings is often the most effective way.
What about that excessive appeasement? Oh, you're right, I'm so stupid.
Be wary of that. Don't let it derail the conversation. Quickly reassure them you're not trying to assassinate him or attack their character, just discussing a specific changeable behavior. Keep the focus narrow.
And the passivity. Letting problems fester.
Address it proactively. Head on, but kindly. Don't wait, assuming they'll sort it out. Address the problem while there's still time. Remember, greens have that sixth sense for guilt. If you hesitate, they might subconsciously exploit your bad conscience by doing less or avoiding responsibility.
Huh.
Be firm, clear about expectations, but always supportive.
Right. Final one, adapting to blue behavior. What's paramount here?
Preparation, preparation, preparation. Always be incredibly well prepared. Have your facts, details, verifiable evidence ready. Use precise examples. This process took exactly 16.5 hours too long, costing X amount.
Stick to the task.
Rigidly. Use checklists if necessary. Do not get personal or engage in casual small talk, especially initially. Keep it focused on the objective data.
Be ready for questions.
Endless questions. Accept you might not know everything, but never, ever, ever say, well, that's just the way it is, without a logical reason. That drives blues crazy. If you don't know, say you'll find out the factual basis.
Acknowledge and follow up.
Yes. Ask them to repeat back what's been agreed to ensure precise understanding. Follow up meticulously to make sure tasks are on track and meeting the quality standard. Don't assume anything.
Avoid inspirational speeches.
Definitely. Stick to concrete facts, realistic perspectives. We have Excel will always resonate more with a blue than let's reach for the stars.
Remind them about feelings.
Gently, yes. Remind them that others do have feelings and that brutal honesty isn't always necessary or helpful. They genuinely don't always realize their blunt, factual statements can wound others emotionally. Frame it logically. Better relationships lead to smoother processes.
And help them with decision-making. Overcome that paralysis.
Yes, provide the crucial analyzed data they need. Then, gently but firmly, push for a decision. Highlight the logical repercussions of further delay. You can even show them how intuition can be logical sometimes, especially when facts are limited, present it as a calculated, well-researched risk.
Phew. That's a lot to take in, but it's incredibly practical advice for dealing with each type.
It really is. It's about having the right tools in your communication toolbox.
Now, we've talked a lot about spoken interactions, face-to-face stuff.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating how much our color leaks out even when we're just writing an email.
Absolutely. Written communication can be a surprisingly clear, silent tell. Our writing style often mirrors our speaking style, revealing those dominant tendencies without us even thinking about it.
Okay, let's run through them. A red's email.
Short, concise, abrupt. Maybe uses all cap S for emphasis or urgency. Like, be punctual, meeting at 9 a.m. sharp, no fluff.
Your appropriate action.
Reply instantly, keep it just as concise, okay, or understood or confirmed. That's it. They just think confirmation of action, not chit-chat.
All right. A yellow's email.
Spontaneous, personal, highly informal, will likely include some social babble, maybe an amusing anecdote unrelated to the main point. Think exclamation points, maybe emojis.
Might need a follow-up.
High probability they forgot the attachment or a key detail in their whirlwind of enthusiasm, like a quick note about a friend spilling a drink at the game last night, tacked onto a work request.
How to respond.
Cordially thank them for the personal touch, maybe briefly acknowledge the anecdote, hope your friend's shirt was okay. Don't rush, but do respond. And gently, gently remind them about anything crucial they missed. Just checking if there was an attachment meant to come with this.
Makes sense. Now, a green's email.
Softer tone. Still personal, but more polished, less spontaneous than a yellow's. Very carefully worded to be non-controversial, avoid any possible misinterpretation or offense. Might include gentle reminders, offers of help.
Like the homemade cinnamon buns?
Exactly. A gesture of care, smoothing the way. They've likely reread it multiple times to ensure it can't possibly cause a fuss.
Your response should be?
Personal and benign in return. Express genuine thanks for their thoughtfulness. Reassure them. And remember not to stress them out when the actual meeting or task happens. Keep the tone calm and supportive.
And finally, the blues email.
Rigorously factual, zero personal touch, zero informalities, highly detailed. Likely includes multiple attachments, maybe background documents, spreadsheets.
In triplicate, for good measure.
Wouldn't be surprised. It'll be formal, full name, title, multiple contact numbers, and it will implicitly assume you have read, understood, and analyzed all provided background material thoroughly before responding.
How should you reply?
Confirm receipt promptly. Promise to review thoroughly and get back to them by a specific time as possible. Absolutely avoid personal questions or casual banter. Stick strictly to the facts and the task at hand.
It's also really insightful to look at how the different colors express anger or react under pressure. The book uses that analogy of drinking glasses.
Yeah, comparing temperament to different glasses, each holding and releasing frustration differently. It's a neat visual.
So for reds, it's like
a shot glass. Short, intense, often incredibly loud burst of anger might be accompanied by physical expressions, pounding a table, forceful gestures. For them, conflict, even a heated argument, is just another form of communication. Energetic, but ultimately about getting things done or clearing the air. Once the steam's released, they often move on instantly. Forget about it.
What about yellows? How do they show anger?
Expressive, emotional. Their mercury rises gradually. You'll see it in their eyes first, maybe getting intense. Gestures become more impetuous, sweeping. Voice gets raised, often quite dramatically. But here's the key. They have a terrible memory for grievances.
Don't hold grudges.
Not usually. They get upset, express it fully, but then tend to forget the problem or the insult quickly once that emotional wave passes. Quick to forgive and forget, generally.
Now, Greens. Beware the fury of a patient man.
That proverb is spot on for Greens. They bottle up anger meticulously, control their emotions tightly to avoid any kind of fuss or confrontation. But when they finally do burst, and it might take years, it's like a dam breaking. A torrential flood of every single past grievance and resentment comes pouring out. Everything has to come out, all the things they've quietly endured. It's why creating a safe, healthy environment for Greens to express smaller frustrations before they reach that point is so critical. Otherwise, they internalize it, which is incredibly damaging for them.
And blues. They don't typically erupt like reds, do they?
Not usually invisible fury, but their anger is just as potent, just channeled differently inwards or expressed through hyper-analysis.
How might that look?
You might see an obsessive focus on tiny, irrelevant details, meticulously nitpicking every single word in a document someone else wrote, or a complete, chilling withdrawal, becoming totally unresponsive, unreachable. Imagine a blue, deeply offended by some perceived inaccuracy or slight, calmly but relentlessly dissecting every single flaw in your logic or your work. Not yelling, but using precision and critical analysis as a weapon. That's blue fury. Quiet but devastating. Understanding these different stress factors is just as vital for smooth interactions. It's not just about how much stress someone can take. Everyone has limits. It's about what specifically triggers stress for each color and how they react.
Because recognizing those triggers helps you avoid pushing unnecessary buttons.
Exactly. For yourself and for others, it helps maintain productivity, well-being, positive relationships. So for reds, what are the main stressors?
Lack of authority or control. No visible results. No challenge. Isolation from the action. Things being too easy. Lacking stimulation.
And their reaction to stress?
They become even tougher, more aggressive, more controlling, more dictatorial. You actually need to push reds, give them challenges, new mountains to climb to stop them getting bored, and then agitated or stressed.
Okay. Yellows. What stresses them out?
Isolation is huge. Having no one to talk to, bounce ideas off. Also, inappropriate or overly critical humor that dampens their natural optimism.
How do they react?
They become sulky, withdrawn, lose that characteristic sparkle, get highly unstructured, lose focus, can't seem to get anything done.
And Greens, we know they hate conflict.
Intense pressure, direct conflict, public criticism, sudden, unexpected change, being forced to take initiative without support, just a general lack of support or harmony, all major stressors.
And their reaction?
Increasing passivity, non-committal responses, stubborn obstinacy, becoming completely closed off, internalizing blame. Sometimes, as we saw, doing virtually nothing is a passive resistance.
Finally, blues. What gets to them?
Unfounded criticism, especially anything questioning their accuracy or competence. Also, spontaneous, illogical, data-free management decisions drive them absolutely nuts.
How do they react under stress?
They become completely closed off, retreat into their shell, engage in extreme hair-splitting nitpicking every tiny detail to an almost infuriating degree. It's a defense mechanism against the perceived chaos or imprecision that's stressing them out.
It's really fascinating, isn't it, how these modern insights seem to echo much older ways of thinking about human behavior. It feels like we've been trying to figure this stuff out for centuries.
Absolutely. There are clear universal patterns. The book briefly touches on this history. You can trace similar ideas way back to Hippocrates in ancient Greece.
The father of medicine, right.
His humoral pathology theory. He thought temperament was based on the balance of 4 bodily fluids: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm.
How did that map onto personality?
Well, a choleric person from Chloe, yellow bile, was seen as fiery, temperamental, a hot-blooded leader. Sounds pretty red, doesn't it?
Definitely. A sanguine person from Sanguis. Blood was controlled by blood. Seen as creative, happy-go-lucky, spreading positive vibes. Very yellow.
Okay.
Then the phlegmatic person from Phlegm. mucus, described as sluggish, slow, calm, a clear precursor to our green type.
And the last one.
Melancholic, from Melina Chloe, black bile, often seen as gloomy, analytical, maybe pessimistic. Strong echoes of the blue profile there.
Wow. And it wasn't just the Greeks, right? The Aztecs had a system too.
They did, quite sophisticated. Based on their 4 elements, fire people were fiery, explosive leaders again, like reds. Air people were determined but easygoing, dynamic, resonating with yellow energy.
Earth and water.
Earth people embodied stability, worked for the collective good, very green. And water people were quiet, secure observers, valuing depth and clarity, sounds a lot like blues, valuing analysis and quiet observation.
So these ancient systems, while maybe simpler than modern DISC, they were clearly onto something.
They absolutely show this long-standing human impulse to understand and categorize our differences, make sense of why people act the way they do. Modern DISC, which built on work by psychologist William Moulton Marston in the 1920s and later popularized by Walter Clark, it uses these colors essentially as simple, memorable labels.
Making complex profiles easier to grasp and use.
Exactly. It's all about recognizing these recurring patterns so we can navigate the world more effectively, build stronger connections, and maybe, just maybe, feel less like we're surrounded by idiots.
We have covered so much ground today. We've really dived deep into this fascinating world of behavioral styles the DISC model brought to life with these colors. From its history, its origins, right through to the nuts and bolts, the practical application of understanding and adapting. You listening now really have a powerful new lens, hopefully, to view your interactions through.
And this whole discussion, thinking about these different styles, red, yellow, green, blue, it inevitably leads us to a pretty fundamental question. It's one the book actually poses in its quiz section, and it really makes you stop and think about your own life.
What's the question?
When you have a choice in your personal life, who you choose as friends, who's in your social circle, maybe even who you choose as a life partner, do you instinctively find yourself gravitating towards people who are very similar to you? Or are you drawn towards your total opposite?
That's a really interesting question to ponder. Because we've seen how, say, a red and a green can really clash, or how a yellow and a blue might struggle, at least initially, to find common ground.
Right. Those potential friction points are clear.
But we've also seen how complementary combinations can be incredibly powerful, like the red being the accelerator and the blue being the brake together. They can create this really balanced, effective dynamic that neither could achieve alone.
So the question for you listening is, what kind of dynamic do you truly seek out in your closest, most important relationships? Do you look for similarity and comfort, or do you seek out difference and maybe challenge? And what does that choice reveal about your own dominant color, your own comfort zones, and maybe even your potential for growth in understanding perspectives vastly different from your own?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And the answer, if you really think about it honestly, could shape your entire life, the quality of your relationships, everything. Something to definitely mull over. Thank you so much for tuning in to Daily Review. We truly appreciate you joining us for your daily dose of literary exploration. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to share these amazing books with you. If you're enjoying what you hear, please consider taking a moment to subscribe, rate, like, and comment on any of the platforms you're listening from. This really helps support our channel and allows us to get better and bring you even more great content. If today's review sparked your interest and you're ready to dive into a copy of Surrounded by Idiots, please consider using the link in our description to make your purchase. Not only does it make it easy for you to get your hands on the book, but it also directly supports our channel and the author, allowing us to keep bringing you more great content. Thanks again for being a part of the Daily Review community.